Our group was working on creating a module for the PUI course. After speaking to the TA for the course, we determined that a concept that the students needed help with was the CSS Flexbox. One of the goals of PUI is to have the students create dynamic web pages, and the CSS Flexbox is a key concept in helping them achieve that. After narrowing our scope, we came up with these two learning goals. The first learning goal is given examples, diagrams, and definitions, students will be able to identify the basic concepts of CSS Flexbox creation that are considered critical components. The second learning goal is, after viewing code snippets and working on a practice coding activity, students will be able to identify the CSS Flexbox codes that match the given images. These two learning goals address both the theory and the basic application of CSS Flexbox. We refined these goals as we were developing assessment questions and then creating our instructional material. For Learning Goal 1, we updated the condition from following interaction with instructional material to given examples, diagrams, and definitions in order to add specificity and directly correlate the assessment questions with the instructional material. We also wanted to narrow the scope of the concepts of Flexbox that we wanted the students to be comfortable with, so we updated the degree to concepts that are critical components. For Learning Goal 2, we realized that we needed to create additional interactive practice material with real-time feedback in order to have students recall the information, so we updated the condition of the learning goal to include that practice activity. This slide gives an example of the instructional material for Learning Goal 1 and a corresponding assessment question. Based on the instructional material, the answer to the assessment question should be more clear. Here is an example of alignment for Learning Goal 2. We provided instructional material as well as a practice activity to help aid the students in answering the assessment question. The assessment question requires more synthesis, but we provided 2 opportunities to the students to learn and practice the concept.
Then we began our iterations. We first come up with our first draft. We wrote some assessment questions and instruction key points based on the expert interview of the teaching assistant and advice from PUI instructors. We collected some pictures, code examples, and practice from the internet. Then we refined our first draft by redrawing all the images, rewriting codes in a more decent way, and refining all the questions using different forms. We choose Google Forms as our platform. We put our refined assessment into the Google Forms and started to prepare the next step. The CTA Think Aloud. We conducted CTA with experts and a novice. We invited Neil, Henry, and Jay, who all have experience as a front-end developer. We interviewed them with the empirical prescriptive CTA Think Aloud. We also conducted empirical descriptive Think Aloud with Ruin and April. We found some insights here. First, sometimes experts cannot recall the fundamental concepts or properties. They will focus more on the connection between different concepts. So we decided to keep the main concepts addressed, the big picture of the Flexbox at the beginning of the assessment. Some experts addressed several important concepts, like justify content and align items. So we added more questions about these key concepts in different forms. We want students to recall, differentiate, and apply those concepts. Also, some experts mentioned confusable concepts. We found that some of our questions are relatively straightforward. So we also modified the questions using confusable concepts. For the novice part, some people struggled with problems we think are relatively easy. So we reassessed the difficulties of questions and reordered the question sequence. Based on the feedback from CTA, we modified our assessment and instruction. To distinguish the pre and post quiz, we used the A-B method. We designed assessment section A and B using the same structure. For half of the students, we use A as the pre-quiz and B as the post-quiz. For another half, we exchange them. To some degree, we could avoid students memorizing the answer without thinking and control the difficulty of our assessment. We also come up with our recruitment plan. We put our courses on the canvas and invited students to the system. For the instructional material, we created a set of slides that included definitions, diagrams, as well as a final example that matched pictures to the corresponding Flexbox code. For the definitions, we broke that into two sections. One section for describing the information regarding the Flexbox container, and also sections for all the items in the Flexbox container. We also use examples of dice, how to write the layout of black dots of different faces. We give students codes step by step with tips and explanations so that we could tell them how to use Flexbox to finish this task from the very beginning. We provided examples of the first and the second phase, then asked them to write the third phase, which is similar to the second one. With this kind of practice, students are easy to get familiar with all the concepts in the Flexbox.
Now it comes to our finding part. We have made 3 interesting findings, and in the left graph shows the overall result. So here you can see 20 participants took part in our course and 18 of them made improvement from pre to post test. Our course is effective. Also, I think we need to do an interview to the number 7 students to help us improve our course. Then comes to the graph on the top. It shows the average improvement from pre-test to post-test. So it shows students who use B as pre-test and A as post-test made higher improvement than the other one. So I think we need to find out what happened here. For the graph in the bottom, it shows the average improvement of different pre-test groups. So here you can see students who in the lowest pre-test groups made the biggest progress after our course. I think it means that our course is friendly to beginners. And also the highest pre-test groups also made some progress. So different levels of students can learn something from our course. For the second finding, question 3 is the most difficult one in both A and B. However, when we build the assessment, we thought this question is just about concept. It's a middle level question when designing it. So we asked some students and find that this question is a multiple choice question, so it's more flexible, and there are too few connections between two sub-descriptions. So students are hard to find all of them. So this point needs to be emphasized in the instruction part because it's easy for students to undervalue or omit now. Another interesting finding is about question 6. So we find that only 4 students learn from pre-test to post-test. 8 students have no learning and even 2 students are misguided. So we think it because the choices look similar but have different functions. We emphasize and differentiate them in the instruction part. So we can find from the form on the top that students of higher scores got more right and students of lower scores got more wrong. So I do think it is a good question, but we need more instructions in this part. Now it comes to our innovations and exciting points part. So our module could offer students an easier way to start. Many students employed do not have too much technical background, but with our course, simulate coding by taking multiple choices questions rather than directly start with coding, which could be overwhelming to them at first. Secondly, we combine page-based materials with interactive games in the instruction part. Programming needs practice and interaction with in-time feedback. And the most exciting point is our interventions are useful. The final part is our limitations and improvement. We gained some student feedback and some of them felt uncomfortable of the layout of the last question and found that the concept part of instruction is too long. So for the next time, we will try other platforms because sometimes Google Forms is not friendly for displaying the code. For the problem of conception part, we will try to address more connections between different concepts to make it easy to remember and understand. Also, we will optimize the assessment part to make students more motivated. giving them some points for every right answer. The next step, we plan to do some difficulty factors assessment to find out why some questions are much more difficult than others.
That's all. Thank you for watching this.